Have you ever taught in a mixed ability classroom? I bet the answer is yes. Am I wrong? How was the experience of teaching and listening? I believe you might have found one or two stones on the way. Greetings. My name is Paula Rodríguez-Arias, and in this video I will be presenting preferred teaching strategies and their impact on low proficiency and high proficiency listeners' comprehension. I'm going to divide this talk into 4 parts: contextualization, literature review, action plan, and reflection. Let's start, shall we? Starting with the setting of this work, it has been designed for 9th graders of a liceo or high school in Viña del Mar, Chile. Hence, the more salient characteristic of this school is that all their learners have a different school background when they start the program. Moreover, this proposal takes into account the unique traits of each student, meaning learning styles, levels of proficiency, interests, and motivation. Another fact to consider is that students lack exposure to oral input, as classes are mostly dedicated to grammatical contents. Well, where does that lead us? A mixed ability classroom that should enhance their listening comprehension. Therefore, it is crucial to try out new methodologies, teaching strategies, and techniques when doing a listening task. In this way, teachers can cater for students' needs and give learners the chance to know what works best for them. To fulfill that purpose, this action research proposal aims at the implementation of 3 teaching strategies: compulsory plus optional tasks, variation, and collaborative listening. Stated as a guiding question, this proposal aims at exploring what are the preferences and impact of 3 teaching strategies on LPL and HPL listening comprehension. That brings us to the constructs that inform the action plan. The first one is L2 listening comprehension. This skill is key for preparing learners for social interactions in which they get exposed to a variety of input. There are 2 synchronous processes learners can harvest to become an effective listener: bottom-up and top-down. The bottom-up process creates a mental representation using the long-term memory, and the top-down allows to balance the lack of lexical knowledge. There are 2 types of listening. Firstly, one-way listening. Its objective is to get information for a communicative purpose, and the role of the learner is merely as a listener. Secondly, interactive listening, in which learners play the role of both the listener and the speaker, so they can clarify meaning or ask the interlocutor to slow down or repeat what was said. The second construct is mixed ability classroom. EFL and mixed ability classrooms have been defined in several ways, but for the purpose of this project, a mixed ability classroom is understood as a class in which there is a range of levels of proficiency in listening comprehension, learning styles, interests, and preferences. The last construct is teaching strategies for mixed ability classes. A number of strategies have been put forward by different authors. However, this intervention focuses on 3 teaching strategies for listening comprehension that have been adapted from Lee and Renandia's work. These strategies are: 1. Compulsory plus optional task, which is going to be understood as having 1 compulsory common task feasible for every student and 1 additional and more challenging task which students can decide to do or not. 2. Collaborative listening. This strategy is going to be carried out following the guidelines of CROSS, who establishes that students should work in pairs or small groups so they can interact and help each other on the comprehension of listening tests. 3. Variation. This strategy consists on having 1 common task but two different ways to approach it. Students will have the freedom to decide that. Moving on to the action plan. This intervention consists of 8 sessions of 90 minutes each that will be held twice a week, and they will revolve around the topic of the arts, based on planes y programas for 9th graders. Regarding the pedagogical sequence, lessons are developed around conceptual, procedural, and attitudinal objectives. Classes are structured using the format of pre-task, task, and post-task. In the pre-tasks, students activate vocabulary. During tasks, students work on real-life activities. The post-tasks activities have 2 parts, a closure for the task itself and a reflective listening journal, which will be described later in this presentation. In each lesson, we develop one of the 3 strategies, and they will be used twice. So, at the end of this intervention, students will be able to reflect on which teaching strategy was the most beneficial for their listening comprehension. The final outcome of this proposal will be a listening portfolio that will collect the different pieces of work of each lesson. As to the materials for this pedagogical proposal, I will use slides as visual support. For example, for the 3rd lesson, students will be working with collaborative listening. Instructions of what to do during this one-way listening activity are projected. During this part of the lesson, students can clarify meaning with the group between the times the video is played. The oral input is authentic to stimulate what students will encounter in real-life situations. After that, students can create the museum of their dreams. This discussion will allow interactive listening to take place. As you can see, the other lessons follow the same procedure. I will move on to the data collection instruments. For that, let's not forget the guiding question for this proposal. To answer it, 2 assessment instruments will be used, the PET test by Cambridge and the reflective listening journal. The PET test is an exam that evaluates an intermediate level of English by assessing the 4 skills. This test will be implemented at the beginning of the intervention. From its results, I will be able to divide students into LPL or HPL based on the scoring from the Cambridge English scale and focusing only on its listening component. During the final lesson, students will be given the same tests. The results of both tests are going to be compared using a pre-test, post-test design to see how favorable the intervention was for LPL and HPL's listening comprehension. In case I have no access to this test, a second option will be to look for an exam of similar characteristics, or I could design a test myself and validate it for its implementation. Regarding the reflective listening journal, it is a paper-based guided reflection that will be given to students at the end of lessons 2 to 8. It will allow students to think of how they felt working with a particular strategy and its advantages. After working with each strategy twice, participating students will be asked to reflect on which one is their favorite one and how they believe it has helped them improve. Thus, I will know what is the preferred teaching strategy for teaching listening in a mixed ability classroom, and if there is a tendency when it comes to LPL and HPL. An option to the reflective listening journal, in case the reflections are not as rich as desired, could be a focus group with students. So, learners could complement each other's thoughts or new ideas could arise that students, by themselves, wouldn't have conceived. To sum up, I would like to highlight the importance of this work for my learning process as a teacher. For me, it was a great opportunity to incorporate my beliefs into this proposal. I had the chance to plan activities I strongly believe in and that I think will engage students and relate to their interests and needs, which, at the end of the day, is the most relevant part. It goes without saying that this wouldn't have been possible without the constant feedback of my tutor. Thanks to that, I won't forget the importance of making informed choices when planning and how they need to align into a coherent whole. That support also underlined how crucial it is to keep updating my knowledge and how it should be reflected on my pedagogical decisions. Nonetheless, I cannot deny the challenge it was for me to base the decisions only on historical data. Even so, I could find the beauty in that, as, with the necessary adaptations, this work could be implemented in many contexts because mixed ability classrooms are not exclusive of high schools, and listening is a skill teachers should reinforce so learners can feel more comfortable working on it. Thank you very much.